Yo, we're live, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. We got a special guest this time. Hopefully, you see his face a lot more. I know I enjoy it when I do. Pause. We got Jose Sanchez of Sports
Oh,
Illustrated. How you doing?
doing all right, my man. It's good to see your face. It brightens my day as well, too.
There we go. There we go. Unfortunately, if you're a Giants fan like myself, it's a little blue right now. Lost in extras to the Texas Rangers out of all people. But hey, we're not here for that. I have my podcast later with Andrew Pasquini that we're going to talk about the Giants. Let's talk some 49ers football and no mini camp, huh? So the couple injuries came in. Shanahan shut the whole thing down. Sounded like they were probably going to shut down mini camp to begin with. Do you think having no mini camp could potentially be a good thing for the 49ers?
I mean, it's just mini camp. I mean, even Kyle Shanahan himself said, he says, I don't usually do mini camp. It's not necessarily a priority. And he did mention, as long as I got to that eighth practice, then we're pretty much like, that's the foundation. So I'm not going to say over there and go cry like, oh, they canceled 3 practices. It's not like they canceled 3 practices at training camp or anything leading up to like a week or something like that. But I'd say it's a little bit fortunate that he had that preordained before that Monday because, or maybe you can even see it as a way like a jinx because he says, I already had it in mind. I'm going to cancel practice the next day. 2 depth players have season ending injuries. That's not really the way you want to end on a note like that. So it was pretty interesting the way Kyle Shanahan phrased his press conference about just kind of refuting it towards like bad luck. Nothing was reactionary and stuff like that because I think while it's a good thing in a way that it doesn't matter, you get these players off on a note because the way it ended, but the way it's going to look for training camp now, it's kind of a little bit like should Kyle Shanahan maybe start looking to adjust things differently because you know it better than I do because you're being a fan your whole life. These guys have just been injury players. He's almighty. I'm just going to do a 40-yard sprint under all these ladders right now because the bad luck on this team is unexplainable. It's almost to the point where you can't just necessarily just key it in as bad luck anymore. I mean, that's just the way I put it. There has to be some type of way that they can look inward, do some soul searching, and figure out a way they could. I don't know because we're not in there. Once I'm there, the practices they kick us out after warm and stuff like that. So there's something that needs to just figure out. There's just something at least like questions need to be thought of.
Yeah, and like you said, even though if you're not there and things come after the time they kick out the media, these are like non-contact injuries. It's not like say Tarvarius went and tackled somebody. Obviously, they're not going to do that with their own teammates. Too crazy in practice to begin with, but think about it on a smaller level like high school. High school, you'll still bang heads with each other during practice. It's not like he went and did that and he got rolled up on someone, came down on his Achilles or wrong or whatever it may be. Same thing with Justin School. These are kind of non-contact injuries and it keeps showing up. Like Jeff Wilson Jr., what was it? He just stood up?
Just stood up. He
Yeah.
stood up or something, which I think is a little weird. I feel like they could have covering it up. Maybe he's doing a little horseplay or something like that. Because I know how they can get in that locker room. So I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked if it was some horseplay and they just don't want to say it. I don't know. But either way, that's just bizarre.
So like the things that happen are just bizarre to where if they do want to try new things, cool. But it sounds like these type of injuries are just unprevented. It's not like they could have had did their what was it where they go back in time? What was that movie called? Back to the Future. It's not like they could have went back in time and prevented these injuries based off circumstances. It's just one of those unfortunate situations that happen to players all the time. Something I'm saying more frequently is quoting Talanoa Hufanga by saying this is a 100% injury sport. Literally any play could be your last play. Hell, any warm up could be your last warm up for a long time based on what's happening with this team. And sure, no mini camp, good thing. It's a good thing. The less that you could get these guys out on that field, and do their own workouts and their own routine. Maybe that's a good thing than forcing guys to be out there. And hey, Brad, I appreciate the contribution to the channel. I appreciate you keep up the good work yourself. And I think what Abe is saying right here, I find that kind of interesting. I know this isn't one of the topics we had coming into today, but Shanahan did speak on this with Trey Lance having the installs already, down to a T. Does this mean Trey Lance is ready? I think it does. Because if you spend 3 first-round picks on a guy and you don't have his installs ready, seeing what happens to this team, like there's no guarantee Jimmy Garoppolo is ready to go week 1, which I'll, knocking on the wood on my desk right here because I don't want that to be in the existence, but it's I think it's safe to say he would be ready for week 1 if he had to and for any circumstance.
Well, I think considering what McDaniel said also, I think it's to the point where he has like a nice firm grasp of the playbook, maybe not necessarily ready to, start week 1, although I'm still an advocate, like hey, as long as he's sufficient, get him out there because that you want to start that rookie contract and that development so you get the most optimal value. But I think for sure he at least has a nice firm grasp. That's one thing McDaniel said is even with just Trey Sermon and all the other offensive rookies is, hey, just the first step is just learning the new language. And that's pretty much a great way he eloquates it is, you come into a new offense, new team, especially the league. It's Kyle Shanahan's league offensive scheme, so there was just trying to get away a firm grasp, firm control, understanding of the verbiage, where everyone's supposed to be. And then from there, that's when he starts saying, that's when we can start doing 100 things of trying to critique his way in the offense, trying to maybe look at some ways of his technique. And just like, going back to the injury point that you're just bringing up with that Abe puts up. See, I'm not saying that maybe there's something they could have necessarily done differently because, injuries, freak accidents, happens in every sports. And like you quoted, it's 100% injury sport. It's always things are going to happen. But it's just hard for me not to think that there's at least not something that you can look upon yourself. What could we have done differently? And that's the NFL. Even in wins, you're always going to think about, what could we have done differently? What could you have scouted differently? What could you have, even in the wins, what was something that didn't work? What was something that did work? What's something, it's just a question, whether it's a question of the field, the intensity, limiting reps. I mean, once again, like we only get a quarter of the picture out there. I just think that it seems a little too convenient that all these injuries are happening to them. So, I mean, maybe there isn't a cure out there. Maybe it is just all bad luck. But the point is, there's just some questions that really should be poised, whether it's from media people or people like us or just fans or the players. There's just something that I think that needs to be a little bit just look inward, just figure it out, something that because it's just too many freak accidents, man. I mean, just 2020 was already bad enough. And I know some of these can be just different, but just something needs to be thought of, some type of theorized, like maybe it's just something that they could do, just even a slight adjustment just to figure it out. I mean, who knows? Maybe it will be a difference in an injury or two that you could reduce from one of these players.
Yeah. And what I'm going to say right now is I'm not going to say it's the same situation as one of these 49ers current players this year that got injured or the previous years. I'm just going to go based off of my previous experience from playing football. Granted, it was at a lot lower level than the NFL. So I'm not going to pretend, that I was training for the NFL or something. When I was in high school, I was, playing sports all year round. And one of them was track because I know, knowing myself, if I didn't go run track during the off season, that I was just going to probably, eat a bag of chips, watch Sports Center all day long. And, once school ended, but okay, I went out there, ran track, had success, went to, city finals, then went to CIF finals for California. So the track season got very stretched out for me. And obviously some of you may know track practice is very intense. It's a lot of running. It's a lot of exercises. It's a lot of your lower half. And one thing I wasn't too keen on was stretching and cooling myself down too much, before and after practice. Football practice came along, and then within like the first week, I was already, with a partially torn tendon in my knee, just that quick. And that sometimes it can happen with these players when they are working out and they're training so hard in the off season, grinding for hours within a day. Um, you come back to the facility and you're already like your body is already blown and exhausted for a certain, it's at its limit, and then you get into these practices and then freak injuries like that are, unpreventable because your body is completely exhausted. So I think that's something else to monitor, and it's going to be one of those things on a player by player basis, because there's certain players that can do all of that and to where their body is not completely exhausted by the time they're in camp, say a la DK Metcalf, because his body is completely shredded, and yet we haven't, seen a soft tissue injury from him as of recent. Um, so I think that's also something that the team may try to look out to make sure these guys aren't exhausting their bodies too early within the off season, or don't try to ramp things up too early within the off season, because that's where you could have those situations come to reality. And like I said, mine is not a direct example. I understand high school level, the NFL level, completely different. I'm just talking about the exhaustion of the body is where those two kind of can correspond.
Hey, don't sell yourself short of that grind, man. You played through injuries.
See,
You put in that work. It's a little.
yeah, you know what I mean. Like I would have been in the league, but my knee, my knee prevented me. I would have been in the league. I had that speed. I had that. I ran the 400, so I could return some kickoffs, play some special teams. I was the next Kasim Osgood, but I was held back from my knee.
No, but it's good. I like that you brought that up. Like it is player by player basis, and the one thing, and that's something that maybe should maybe start considering to adjust, maybe implement in a way. And who knows? Maybe it is like their training staff once again. Who knows? But one thing for sure is they did acknowledge they had to do something, because, and I'm going to always harp back on this, post draft conference. John Lynch, someone asked a question, John, we noticed you finally didn't draft someone with a injury history or anything like that. And he alluded to and said straight up, like, we kind of changed tinkered our grading process in the sense that, we kind of tried to filter out like injury prone players or just something about their injuries. So if they had an injury, they kind of hurt them in the way of getting drafted by the 49ers, because they knew 2020, they had to change something. So what they do, they go change, and, not saying they did a massive overhaul of what they do in terms of the draft process, but the fact that he mentioned it, he even went on like a nice little paragraph essay talking about we needed to do something different, grading process. So so right there, they made that's something right there they did in terms of the draft. I don't know. I think free agency is still something different for their viewpoint, but at least the draft was something right there that they already self-acknowledged, hey, we need to do something different. But now it's maybe about something the way they do in terms of practice, whether it's OTAs or training camp or whatnot. Because even last training camp with D Ford and other players just getting hurt, Jalen Hurd, it's not just, these aren't just two, random exclusive injuries. Things happen in the past that need to get considered. It's, once again, it could be something freak accident, but there's something that maybe that has to be researched here in their own sense, for their own benefit.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point that Jason said, that Will Blackman stated. It's, like a lot of it sucks because with social media, a lot of people like to post videos and look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing. And, if you're working out too hard or doing anything too crazy, I think I heard Will Blackman, like a little segment on that, talking about like he changed his offseason reps to where he wasn't doing deadlifts anymore. That's smart. That's a lot of strain that you're putting on your knees and in the body for what? You don't really need to do, deadlifts in the off season. There's other things that you could work on. But yeah, like Kavi said, there's only so much that strength and conditioning can control. And since there's only so much they can control, that eval process, coming up with the players, how does their body react to certain things, or how does it change with certain workouts and routines, and maybe the team could study that a little more. I don't know how much resource they put in, so I don't want to make it sound like it's something they need to do. Who knows, they could be exhausting every resource to do so already, but at least have some type of playbook for your players, and by knowing their body on what you could do in the offseason and what the hell you should stay away from.
Yeah,
But
that's true. And I'll end on this one. I mean, they can only control the players so far, even when like now until training camp, they're not going to see him again. They might not even hear a handful of these players. Heck, maybe even half the team. So it's just you know, you can tell them, hey, this is the workout we want for you guys, and they might still go ahead and do it. So a lot. That's what I'm saying. Just quest. It's not just trying to blame the 49ers or strength conditioning. You know, it's just everything. Just, you know, maybe a nice little telescope look on each little aspect, facet of the team and the players. And, you know, maybe you'll find something. Who knows?
yeah, even foods that they should stay away from. Like there's a whole thing that goes into it. All right, this next topic here,
True.
yeah, it's a little dicey, but I want to know. Anytime you talk about this guy, it's a little dicey. Buy or sell. This is the best spring for Jimmy G on the 49ers. That's what Kyle Shanahan alluded to, that he's looked the best this spring than he has before, considering that some off seasons, they were rehabs and he wasn't being able to participate at the level he does right now. So are you buying or selling?
I am buying that easily because what is this, like his second spring or something, or maybe his third spring that he's actually been with the 49ers? So what are the odds right there?
Right.
He's a 50-50 toss up at this point. On top of now, he has a little incentive motivation that he has Trance underneath him. Because personally, as much as some people want to prop up, yeah, see the Jimmy G with the mentoring stuff, I don't think he's gonna be that forthcoming. And not to say he's gonna have some type of animosity against them, but at the end of the day, he wants to bury Trey Lance because he needs to help himself, prop up himself for 2020 on top of staying healthy, getting back to a nice, strong sense that he was in 2019 and maybe even better than that. So that way he can keep getting the salary he's been being paid the last few years. Because once he gets traded, whoever he's going to sign with or get traded to, he's going to want to sign that one more extension so he can keep living that custom life that he's used to. Prop up his worth. He understands that he's on borrowed time. And for as long as it starts with health. That's number one. And then number two is just continuing to show that he has that killer instinct. We don't really see that too much from him because, number one on the field, and number two, he just not really have that stuff to really put it on his shoulders. But I'm buying this 100%. I mean, it's only been 8 practices, the second off season. So it's pretty easy to point out that why he has that little extra chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and buy it as well because, like you said, his first year as a Niner, 2017, he obviously wasn't in camp for that. He was a New England Patriot. 2018, he came in. He was healthy for camp. 19, recovering from that ACL. Last year, it was just kind of tough with all that lingered from the Super Bowl. And then lingered with the Tom Brady and the 49ers being interested, but logistically didn't work. And then this year, like that cloud of questioning if you're the guy, that's basically out the window because they invested on Trey Lance. So all you can go ahead and do is just work and work and work. And I think that this guy is probably having his best spring right now. Hasn't been known to be the best practice player. You've seen him firsthand in practice. He hasn't been known to be the best practice player out there. But I haven't heard anything about him being completely awful like before, to where say he threw 5 interceptions. Remember that before the 2019 season?
Yeah.
And granted, it's a different player than it was in 2017 because Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have his ACL injury then. But now he's a few years removed from that. I think we can, get off of that. It's his ACL excuse. If people were using it, I'm not saying everybody is. If people were using it, to where the guy should be feeling more like his old self on what he was in 2017, and if he can get back to that level, I think that bodes well for Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think that bodes well for the 49ers. So Jimmy Garoppolo's still in a win-win situation to where, hey, you may not be the guy they invested in anymore. That may be Trey Lance, but hell, you're still young enough. You're not a running back. If you're a running back, you'd be too old. But at the quarterback position, you are still completely young enough to go get another contract. Not only just a contract, to go get another big $100 million contract. So I think this guy has stuff left in the tank, and And in 2017, like I said, he's not the same guy now, at least ACL injury wise, history of it. He went and balled because there was a contract on the line. His future was on the line, whether he's going to be a franchise quarterback with 49ers or if he's going to end up being a career backup somewhere. So when he had that motivation, he balled the hell out. Like statistically, it's not that pretty. What was it? 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but they
Yeah.
won, if not all of those games, because of Jimmy Garoppolo. It wasn't because of the team. It was because of Jimmy Garoppolo. Those are the reasons why they won those games. So if he can have that same competitiveness, that same motivation that helped him succeed and carry the team in 2017, yeah, he could be one of those guys to where they play their best when their backs against the walls, and his back hasn't been against the wall the previous few years. It was just, him getting out of that injury hole to where now it's like, dude, all he can do is ball out. And when he came in 2017, he was auditioning for the 49ers and all other teams in the NFL. And this year, he's auditioning for the 49ers as well as for all other teams in the NFL. So I look at those parallels to where, yeah, this is probably I'm not surprised that Kyle Shanahan said that Jimmy Garoppolo's having his best camp so far. So I buy it. And all
you're getting
49er
better or
fans,
worse in this
real
league.
quick, all 49er fans should be buying it as well. Because the best case scenario is that Jimmy Garoppolo balls out and the 49ers get 1 first, if not a little more than 1 first.
Yeah, you're getting better or you're worse in this league, and it's not far fetched to believe that hey, once you got a little fire in your behind right there, you're gonna start to want to play it better. So it's no coincidence, even if it is just Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback. It happens to all players, a lot of stars, that once you get that little dangling fruit in front of you, you're going to want to chase it and go full court press, especially with Trey Lance behind them. So he's kind of like sandwiched in between that has to propel him to want to be that way. And plus, it's spring ball. I would expect that, a veteran like him, an incumbent starter, is going to have a nice spring regardless, especially if he's going to be looking at the same defenses over and over again. And it's been plenty of instances, like even last training camp, where I think someone said, like, yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo looked good out there. And then, Kyle Shanahan comes out and just downplays it. He's like, yeah, he's kind of throwing against the same defense, same look. So I would hope to expect that. That's one thing to be expected. Not saying that, spring ball and training camp's the same thing, but, you're either getting better or worse. And you hope at this point, you're like, hey, I hope he's got it, got the motivation, he's everything in the world. Because if he's not, then shoot, start the trade train right now then.
Yeah, which, if he doesn't get better, what the hell is the market at that point? Well, let's get into another guy that's had injury history with the 49ers, and that Shanahan was surprisingly a little positive when it comes to him being on the field, and that's Dee Ford, saying Dee Ford is hopeful to be ready for training camp. Like, do you think this is a reality? Do you think it bodes well for the 49ers and Dee Ford? Like, what's your thoughts of him just being on the field for training camp?
Anything they say, I don't care about. I just need to see him out there, at this point. And maybe you don't even need to see him out there that much, to be honest, because this guy needs to be bubble wrapped. He is walking glass. This guy is just in a body cast, man. This guy, you have to take care of him. All right. His body is just soft. It's built that way, unfortunately. And it's just when he's out there, especially for the 49ers, you saw in 2019 how much better that pass rush was. And even for Nick Bosa, even when you had Bosa, Armstead, and Buckner out there playing top tier, you still needed that extra edge to help alleviate all the pressure off everyone else. So for him ready for training camp, you hope that's a good sign. You hope they're telling the truth. You hope he goes out there and doesn't re-injure himself. We just 10 minutes ago, we're talking about workload with these players. This is the guy that needs the least amount of workload for practices, training camp, and such, because you need him on those Sundays. It's him and Bosa. Give him like maybe a half day. Let him practice Wednesday and don't have him practice the rest of the week. Because this guy, you already invested so much money on him. Now it's about protecting your investment and making sure your Sundays are adequate. Because once again, that pass rush last year, as great as the defense was very average to below average. So with him being ready for training camp, once again, hope it's the truth. because they've been saying he's been getting ready since January. He's been in and out, getting this work done. So you just hope it's not a farce and that he actually is somewhat ready, and just do not pressure him to keep doing too much, because last year he looked pretty good entering training camp. He was, going up against Trent Williams, looked nice little speed, and I guess he was trying to go too hard and prove himself because, sure enough, he got injured at the back and we never heard from him again.
Yeah. And I feel good about Dee Ford's situation if he's there for training camp. The reason why I feel good is I don't think the 49ers, especially Kyle Shanahan or even D'Amico Ryans, is going to force or put pressure on Dee Ford to be out there for training camp. So if the medical says, hey, like, he's good to go, if Dee Ford is feeling good to go and he's out there, I think that's a really good sign for the 49ers. And his production or his efficiency, I think it could drop off significantly if he doesn't have any one-on-one reps and he just goes out there on game day. I think there could be a huge drop off on production. So if he's out there and he's able to get some one-on-one reps, use his hands, use his get off the ball, and not only see that just in games, if that happens during the season, that's fine. But I would like, to live in a world that Dee Ford got some one-on-one reps in training camp, and he's not just forced to learn it in gameplay and get himself game ready or in game shape or mid-season form just by playing in games only. If he could get those in practice, I think that works out for Dee Ford fantastically. So if I see him on the field doing that in training camp, I feel very confident about his injury, and I did not expect myself to say that at any point in this offseason, but I just don't think that they would risk someone with a back injury, especially on the defensive line, to get some work in. So that's why I feel confident if I see him on the field. If I see him on the field in training camp, I'm very confident.
Yeah.
He could be a contributor to this 49ers team. If we just expect him to be in midseason form in game with none of that practice, then I'm not too confident he could be a valuable contributor, because it's going to be hard to just catch back up on when your last game technically that you lasted through was a Super Bowl, which it wasn't a good performance on his part.
I wouldn't expect them to put that any pressure on him either. And just, even if they don't remember last year the way training camp, if even thinking the way how he performed, then just remember how he how he did end the way in 2019 with his hamstring injury. They kind of pulled him back a little too early, and he re-injured it in the Saints, and they never saw him until the playoffs. And look how much that dropped off. So for him, this is a guy who, once again, just bubble wrap him, limit his training camp reps. And even then, I'm not confident in this guy. If they say he's healed, it's like, I personally, I don't care. This is a guy who I think it's not if he's going to get injured, but when. When. And that time, hopefully, like you said, is during the regular season. So at least you get something from him, so you're not burning more cash that you already have with him. I just don't know how. I personally just cannot look at Dee Ford and say I'm confident he's going to remain healthy, even for like a stretch of time for more than a month. It's just hard for me at this point. This guy's lost all faith in my account in terms of being reliable in that sense. Fingers crossed, because I love watching them be productive on that pass rush. Even if Nick Bosa somehow, not somehow, because I do expect him, even if Nick Bosa comes back to the level he was in 2019, Kinlaw, all these players step up, it's still something that you want to see with them out there. But this is a guy who you really got to be the most skeptical of, Even Jason Verrett, as much as he proved to be relatively healthy last year, this is a guy who I'm still saying, hey, that's right now, that's an outlier season, and then behind that, then what? So there's like him and these players, you just really got to grain of salt, it's once again, it's like fingers crossed, hope so. But for me, a 0% chance I feel any confident in Ford's health, and it's even lasting longer than a month.
Ooh, that's tough. Man, hopefully he could change your mind. That would be great, for the 49ers. And how great would that be?
This guy's barely had a season. He's barely had a season for health.
I'm not going to put money on it, but I'm just saying hopeful. If Kyle Shanahan's hopeful, then I'll be hopeful as well. Yourself, as someone who
has to be hopeful.
Yeah. yourself, someone who has played DB at at a level, competitive level before. How great is it to be out there with say a pass rush? Imagine that D Ford is healthy, along with what else they have with Samson Ebukon, Eric Armstead, if he's able to play three tech a little more, um, Kinlaw at the one tech, and you even have Maurice Hurst at the one tech, and obviously Nick Bosa. How great would that be?
That'd be fantastic. You could start getting a little, not saying they are going to get complacent, but it's almost like you feel compelled to get complacent now. It's like, I just guarded this guy for 3 seconds and it's over. What's up? So it's become so advantageous so much dramatically because even in 2019, I think they were a little underrated. They were underrated, the 49ers secondary, and overrated at the same time. It's like, hey, it's not like they really have to last coverage for too long, but when you saw them needing to make plays, they needed to. But hey, that's a luxury you always want. As much as I'm always biased, there's DBs and stuff like that. You know, you got to take the efficient pass rush over the efficient coverage like more times than not, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, give me a pass rush. That's gonna improve your corners. Let's go ahead and talk. So Mike McDaniel had his first, meeting with the media today. He looked a little nervous. That's okay. I would be too. Like, hey, some guy named Grant
So
Cohn who has
quirky.
30,000 subscribers on YouTube is asking you questions. Like, I'll be really nervous.
32.
32,000 YouTube subscribers. I'd be really nervous too if I was Mike McDaniel. That's okay. But he did explain that he's not going to call any plays at all, that it would be pretty much a disservice to the 49ers to not have Kyle Shanahan call plays just to make his own Mike McDaniel's ego feel good about himself that he called a play. Do you think he should, or do you think he's politically, but also just correct in general?
I mean, he knows his role, and plenty of teams do this where it's like, hey, we have an offensive coordinator, but I'm the head coach who's the offensive guru. I'm going to call the plays. Plenty of teams do that. McVay does that with the Rams. Raiders do that with Gruden, and of course, Shanahan was going to do it. I think with McDaniels, it's just you don't really need. Kyle Shanahan. I want him to. It's not even a slight against McDaniels. Kyle Shanahan has to do that. You got that extension. It's not because of the way you build a roster. It's because, we know how you can build a culture around the team, get everyone to buy in, and the way you play design and do play calls on a week in and week out basis. But one thing the furthest I'll go for him in terms of calling plays, let him get some series in preseason. And that's actually something I've been holding in my back pocket to write about in the coming months, just to see like, hey, why not maybe just half, a quarter? I think Andy Reid did that with Bieniemy. I think even plenty of teams have done that. Just like, hey, let's just get him out there. Let's build this guy up. Maybe that because this is different when you're just like you're in a room building the plays versus you go out there and you're actually calling them in a pressure situation. And it's a preseason game, so it's not but it's the realest thing you're going to get. It's why also the same thing. What's in my opinion, what's Trey Lance going to learn on the sideline? We learn by doing. So let's make McDaniel get out there and let him do play calls for a series, a drive, a quarter. But other than that, I want Kyle Shanahan to call those plays for the regular season while McDaniels just supports him in that sense. Maybe chiming in, hey, Kyle, I think we should maybe call this thing. So just because he's offensive coordinator by name, this is something we've been knowing. And he's okay with it. He understands. And he mentioned there's not a lot of egos in the room, which is great. That's why this team, both offense and defense, they always do a great job of adapting to their players instead of forcing them into a box that they're not fit for. So the way they're all set up right now, the structure is perfect. You mentioned the power chain. Keep it that way. It's been working. Kyle Shanahan, unfortunately, didn't get to show that much of his genius because of the injuries, so many backup players. So Kyle Shanahan needs to call those plays, and McDaniel's the furthest you go for him. Let him dabble in a little bit of preseason, if anything.
Yeah, and I think you talking about the preseason, having him call plays, like experience it, because while you may be thinking like, man, like I would have called this play in this situation, that play I know would have worked. Sometimes that's not reality. You just feel that way because you didn't get your play ran. So I think it would be great from an experience, from a learning standpoint. And hey, if he's on your staff and he can grow and be better at what he does on a day-to-day basis, then that's a win for Kyle Shanahan and this coaching staff. And I think it's very interesting because what if Kyle Shanahan's already going to go into a position to where he's going to have a selective plays that he's going to want to choose during certain situations? Who knows if the play that Mike McDaniel suggests, and it's like, hey, like, I like this matchup. Maybe if we could learn something like this, and Kyle Shanahan goes with it. Technically, that's kind of calling the play.
Yeah.
So I think it's very honorable that Mike McDaniel is speaking the way he is. Like, well, he's basically been a ride or die with Kyle Shanahan, anyways, his whole coaching career. But the fact that he's like, hey, this is like the 49ers, they're paying for Shanahan essentially because of his play calling. It would be a disservice
Mhm.
to the ownership. It would be a disservice to the franchise to just take away the reason why he's here. He's an offensive genius. But yeah, it's like, who knows, in between the lines to where his suggestion is the one that's being called, or what he sees is what Kyle Shanahan decides to go with. Like, those are things in between the lines that where it's Mike McDaniel kind of called the play, which I'm pretty confident that's happened before in the past. That, especially if they're about no egos and they're about a collective group effort on their game planning. Like,
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure Mike McDaniel had a few plays in there that he designed that he wanted to go with, or thought would be successful on the opening drive. And I think that's why potentially Mike McDaniel is so, humble when it comes to it, because I think Shanahan has gave him an opportunity in a way.
Yeah, I think Shanahan would benefit himself from letting Mike McDaniels go out there because not only number one, it shows, hey, look, I'm generous to my coaches. I want them to better themselves, and look, I'm giving them opportunity in the preseason. I want him to better themselves. I want him to see a new light because, for all you know, maybe doing some play calling for a series, a quarter, however long, will open his eyes to a new dynamic, a new aspect. So that way, not saying yes, tunnel vision, but it'll broaden your horizons more. That if you get to go and have that in your arsenal now, like, hey, like now I can see things from this situation a little more differently because I was actually in that position to call that play, or how would I have handled it, perceived that. So it benefits him because now McDaniels will have that thought process like, man, I was in that situation, so maybe I can guide Kyle a little better or maybe support him in a way. So it has a nice little two sides to it, the way it'll benefit him. It makes him look good. Like, hey, look, I'm trying to hook up my coaches. I'm trying to better you. It's like a boss. Like, hey, I want you to elevate yourself, uplift yourself by me giving you this opportunity. And he also gets to see it and, be able to interpret in the way how he wants to handle that going forward. So it's all a good way to just benefit yourself and benefit Kyle Shanahan for the future, because I think you never know, maybe he'll see some way to implement better things, because I know for one thing he loves Kyle Juszczyk is his favorite player. You never know, maybe he'll
Right.
incorporate him and running backs in a different way, maybe different motions that maybe you never would have thought of had you not been in that situation.
You've been an advocate for that, haven't you? Kyle Juszczyk getting the ball a little more.
Yeah. Just a
Yeah, I
little
looked
bit,
at.
just a little bit more. And I wanted to ask a question in that pressers, but they don't give too much love to people who they don't credential in the first place anymore. But it's just, I just wanted to see because I think, Kyle Juszczyk, someone that should not dramatic dramatic increase, but I know in 2019, he was more efficient in that sense, motioning out or just lining straight up as a slot receiver, which I think is something like that in a way that can bridge to our next topic, just the way that you could do it in a sense that just implementing more of that way just to throw the defense off balance.
So
Yeah, see,
basically,
right there.
use Juszczyk more like a Tom Rathman, because man, I watched some of those games where Joe Montana was the quarterback, and Tom Rathman was used quite a freaking bit, a lot more than Juszczyk.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we'll
Juszczyk gets
get
paid a
there.
lot more, and he's a unique talent.
Well, yeah, the times were a lot different compared to Tom Rathman, so I hope he gets paid a lot more. Uh, and then another thing that Mike McDaniel spoke on that kind of caught my attention, because with Mike McDaniel's presser, it seemed like he didn't want to say anything that he was not confident or wasn't sure about. Like, he didn't really touch on it. He just gave like, well, I think it was something about like, oh, if you predict this roster out, you're gonna look like a fool because of there's so many different variables and stuff like he's a big guy based on variables. If there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
variables that can happen, he ain't gonna say there's any type of assurance into it. But He did
That's
speak
typically what you
very
want, though,
highly
too,
of
is from your
Mohamed
first
Sanu.
one.
Yeah, he did speak very highly about Mohamed Sanu on compared to other situations
Yeah.
he didn't even want to talk about. With Sanu, he was on board to talk about it. Said that Sanu basically looks like a different wide receiver than when they got him last year. Last year he was battling some injuries, and this year he's in great shape. And went as far as to say when they come back for training camp, and if Mohamed Sanu's in that same shape, that he's going to be very hard to beat out for a 53-man roster spot. So obviously, when saying a lock, I'm saying Mohamed Sanu is going to come back in the same shape here. He's not going to, go somewhere in Miami and tweak something. Like, he's going to come back in the same shape based on what Mike McDaniel says. Almost every team has that veteran wide receiver on their roster. Would Mohamed Sanu be that lock? Because there's Kevin White there. There's Travis Benjamin there.
Kevin White.
But seems like Mohamed Sanu might be that lock to be that vet wide receiver.
I don't. No, I don't like calling him a lock and anything because they could cut him for no reason just because if they saw someone else promising. But yeah, you're right. He has a good chance. Familiar with Kyle Shanahan, they already like him the way he has that step back and everything, and they definitely need that vet receiver. But there's also Travis Benjamin there. You never know how he's going to fare in that sense. It was a little weird that they brought him last year and they cut him, but I guess with the injuries, it kind of adds more context and stuff. But I wouldn't go as far as to say a lock. I would say if he's your third best receiver, it's not bad. But I don't expect, unless someone goes out and grabs that number 3 wide receiver spot where Kendrick Bourne used to be, whether it's Sly or just in general in that third depth chart. I expect that to be platooned for a good while until someone really starts to hit their stride and looks promising that you can assure about. And that's something that what we were just talking about. That's why we want Kyle Shanahan calling the plays, and that's why he should, because he knows great how to fabricate some production from that wide receiver position. And at least Mohamed Sanu, if you kick him in there, he can probably go out there and do it, or get the running backs out there to fill in, or get some of the tight ends out there to fill in. Then you never know if there's other players on board, like on the depth chart, like Richie James or Jalen Hurd, if he starts finally getting healthy and shows he can step up. And then, of course, you have the starters out there. It's plenty of players that can, be in that platooning system. I just think a little bit the scary point is once you start using that, then maybe you expose your star players who are already looking to be a little injury prone, in George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, maybe even Ayuk out there who had a little scuffs last year. But if Sanu actually turns out to be what he is and the way that they're describing him, the way McDaniel's described him, that would be solid. That's a solid group right there. And the way that Javi highlights that too, I think that would be a great look right there. You get your two veterans in Benjamin and Sanu. You hope Hurd, you can bring him along shortly, or slowly, I should say. And if he turns out becoming health becomes no longer a factor, then boom, now you got your good players. You got Richie James' special teams, who could always step in. But it's a little hard to say who's a lock right now. Even he said, if you're looking to, he says, I'm not a betting man, but if you're looking to put any guarantees before training camp, I wouldn't hold your breath.
Yeah. So Javi, I like that. I would just like to make one substitution, and that would be Juwan Jennings over Travis Benjamin. Hey, I'm a Miami Hurricane fan. I've always been my whole life. Travis Benjamin's from the U. I respect it, but I would like to see Juwan Jennings make that wide receiver core over Travis Benjamin. I'm not saying he will, but I would like to see it. You got Craycraft off there, but you have him on your practice squad. Yeah, I had Austin Watkins Jr. as someone who could be the wide receiver 3 potentially, but then I kind of forgot that it took Kendrick Bourne a long time, basically till year 3, to gain that trust in Kyle Shanahan to be that wide receiver 3. So to expect Austin Watkins to do that year 1 as a undrafted free agent was kind of unrealistic on my end. But with Sanu, I think he could go ahead and make this team. Yeah, locks does seem like a stretch since we're in freaking the beginning of June here. I would, and if you have Ayuk, Deebo, Hurd, I should say a healthy Hurd, a healthier version of Sanu since he had those injuries last year. And like you said, it provides context and why they let him go, as well as Richie James. Like those five alone, that's a solid five. I think, in my opinion, especially if Hurd is healthy, because you could do some of that gadget stuff with Jalen Hurd. I don't know how much of it you would want to do just because he's a back issue guy, just like D Ford. Sanu, if he's healthy, I think he could be a reliable target for Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance or whoever the hell Jose Sanchez is in at quarterback for the 49ers. Hopefully it's not Jose Sanchez, but
hopefully it's not.
I just think Sanu could make this team, and I think he does provide context for being that veteran receiver. If I remember correctly, when it was news that they let him go last offseason, Brandon Ayuk was one of the guys that was on social media kind of not too happy about it because Sanu did provide that big brother role. He's a guy who's been in this offense for a long time. Yeah, the language may be different in San Francisco to Atlanta, but it's all basically the same. Just a different international language, if you want to look at it like that. So that's why I think he does make this team. Like I say that confidently now. If I were to bet on it, I'm gonna bet he makes this team.
Yeah, I want to circle on that player you mentioned, John Jennings. Yeah, it's just him, Watkins. I'm not even putting him in anything right now because right now those are practice squad players or they're getting cut or something like that because just the way, only because in the sense, not saying they don't have talent, because I know you guys, especially, you went to the Senior Bowl and saw Watkins up close. But it's just right. When you're an undrafted player and you're those late picks, there's no incentive for Kyle Shanahan to want to like look into you because they didn't invest much in you. So I mean, the same thing with Bourne. Like you said, it took 3 years. It's not like they invested a high draft pick. So who are they really looking at here? Sanu, at least they know Shanahan. Like, hey, Sanu's got experience with my system, and then Benjamin, veteran, and then Hurd. So that's why I think it's for sure that strongness, that strong core that's going to be, and then James just rounds it out because of his special teams value. So I think Javi's on the money in that way. I mean, not unless, in the way Grant says, River freaking Craycraft steps up and becomes that dominant force that he was in the Green Bay game, then I think the way he predicted it, that's who it's looking to be. But I have no faith in Kevin White. I'm not even talking about Kevin White. Come on.
Are you tall, Jose? How tall are you? Because Javi's like 5'5".
I'm 5'11".
Okay, 5'11". That's
Javi's a little. No, Javi's a little. Javi's a little chiquito, a little kid.
Javi's actually like 5'9", but we just say that because when we were at Mobile for the when we were out there for the Senior Bowl, Javi didn't expect me to be 6'1", so I came out there and Javi was like, "What the fuck? I thought you were like 5'8". I was like, "No, I'm not 5'8", man." And then Jason Aponte comes out there and Jason's taller than I am, as everyone probably saw on social media, on Twitter by now. Jason's 6'5", so he got there. Javi was like, "Jason, sit the fuck down!" Like, so Javi was instantly the shortest guy out there. So that's why we messed with him, calling him a short guy, just because he's under that line. 5'10", 5'10", huh?
You know how you compare? You know how you compare Javi to you guys? Like my thumb. This is you guys. That's my thumb. That's Javi, all short and stubby compared to you guys. That's the way Javi's looking. He's looking like a thumb and stuff from Spike. He's gonna be so pissed.
He got some. He's got some power cleaning today, so he's probably gonna power clean twice my weight now. He's just gonna blast on some music and just power clean it all.
That's probably why he's short, because he lifts and so compresses himself. The way he like just deadlift, he puts the weight on his shoulders and just gets him walking.
This was Jed and or John's call for sure. Which call?
On which one? Jed and
no. Oh.
Can you go
canceling minicamp? There we go. Canceling minicamp. It was Jed or John's call for.
No, it's definitely that's all Powell.
Yeah, I think it could be all collective three. on that like Jed
It's Kyle,
obviously
and they're
he's
just
paying
supporting
these
him.
guys. If Jed's the paycheck, so Jed doesn't want to pay guys that aren't gonna essentially play and be out for the year. John, he's the general manager. He doesn't want to have to go find diamonds in the rough. Same thing with Shanahan. Like Shanahan's the coach. He wants the best 53 available. So I think it could be an all collective effort to where they sat down and was like, hey, this is the plan I'm thinking, and they all probably said, yeah, I think the same. Let's call it. And we did find out that the social gathering sounded like it was bowling, right? Did Kyle Shanahan confirm that they all went bowling, or at least that was going to be the plan?
So something like some little botany. It's like, come on, man, really? Just go.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
bowling.
I just thought that was funny. Little botany. Y'all some tall Hispanics. Yeah, we are. Hey, that's why Javi thought you were shorter, because he's like, oh, this guy's Mexican. There's no way he could be that tall. Because that's what everyone says. Like, how are you?
Yeah, I was gonna say I have a little squeaky voice as well, so it doesn't convince my height to be a little taller. I would play wide receiver 3, but then I noticed once I got to college, I had to switch to full-time corner because all of a sudden my hands didn't work no more. So so then I went to play corner, but that was fine. Corner was fine because I wasn't relied on my hands doing my job. They look as a knockdown as a positive. So if I was doing that as a wide receiver, then that's obviously I'm gonna get cut. So made that transition. But
got them brick hands.
I know. So I'm no red zone threat. Hey, put me out to block though. I could block in the red zone. That's fine. Hey, if it's this 49ers team, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, if you're listening, I will block and I'll play special teams. Remember. But yeah, I do kind of have like 50 pounds.
What are you blocking?
More weight.
The only thing you're blocking probably is all your arteries from all the fried stuff you're probably eating. That's the only thing you're blocking, really.
You know what? I live in San Diego. I live in San Diego. You can't blame me for having taco
That's
shop.
the only thing you're blocking.
You can't blame me. I literally had carne asada fries last night.
So, there you go. So that's the only thing you're blocking.
It's like literally any taco shop I can go out to here is fire. So you can't blame me for having all the grease out there. And who played? I ain't never played soccer.
Wow.
I ain't never played soccer. I
was never on a soccer
not till I was like,
I don't know this guy's
not
playing.
Till I was like,
this guy's straight stereotyping us. What kind of stuff is it?
Not till I was 18. Just because the homies were like, "Hey, join our team," and I was like, "All right, I'm down." Played strictly defense, but then I was a little too physical, getting red cards and stuff, and I was like, "All right, soccer's not my sport." Like if I played football my whole life, I can't be out there and just toe tap on the soccer field.
Yeah, when you're all chasing for the ball and you're just over there like, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and just like collide shoulders with this guy, and it's like, hey, what was that for? Like, sorry, guy. Sorry.
It's so funny. And then when they get mad,
the theme song is
mad, I'm like, "What's up, you want to go?" And they get all mad. I'm like, "What's up? You want to go?" Like that's how you get used to playing football your whole life. And then I learned that doesn't translate into soccer. So my soccer career retired like within a week. I was like, nah, I can't do this. This ain't fun. Let's see. You had some
those days are over, man.
California burritos. Oh yeah, dude. Cali burritos. That's why it's so hard for me to like move out to the Bay or although I do love rice and beans in my burritos like they have out there in San Francisco and the Mission especially. They don't do that in San Diego. You get looked out weird if you have beans and rice in your burritos. But yeah, like the Mexican food here is just like if I move to El Paso, can't do it. I went to Arizona and I went to one taco shop in Arizona. They had nacho cheese on my carne asada fries. And I wanted to run back. I wanted to run back to California so bad. I've never seen nacho cheese on some carne asada fries. I've never seen it.
Yeah, I made sure. I was just there in Arizona this past week, and I made sure to stay away from Mexican food pretty much like that because I wasn't too sure about, Phoenix being too adept, in our people's food. But what place around here does do nacho cheese sauce on their food is La Vic's. La Victoria is in San
They
Jose,
do?
and that's why I hate that place. I'll always yes, they're not real, dude. Come on, man. That's why I hate it. It's overhyped. That orange sauce is straight buns. It's disgusting. All that's gross. The 1 year I lived in San Jose, terrible, most overrated spot. For really talking food.
Central Valley. What part of Central Valley? Are we talking Fresno? Like CG said right here. We talking Fresno. Hey, if we're talking, this quickly turned into a food podcast, and I'm all for it. A Mexican food podcast.
That's it. It's gonna be hungry, bro.
Yeah. I haven't even eaten all day, so I already know. Like I got my taco shop on speed dial. Like I'm not lying. That's what I did yesterday. So I'm probably.
They know Leo by his first and last name.
I live in AZ. You guys need to hit up the holes in the wall. Yeah, I went to some spot. It was like Yaki or something like that in Arizona, and that's where they put the nacho cheese on, and yeah, that I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stick to like what do they have out there? Whataburger. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to like Whataburger and out there in Arizona. It was in Tucson because I went to go visit my sister. She went in and moved out there. If you guys moved into Fresno, we're all like, yeah. See, I do hear Fresno got the joints though. Have you heard the same?
I'm not going to Fresno. I
went out there for CIF track finals when I was 18, but that was the last time I went out there. So we're talking about 10 years ago.
There's a reason why that was the last time you went out there. Why would you go out there? I don't, no offense, people that live there. You'll never catch me dead in those areas. I'm not going over there. It's too hot. It's too barren. I'm cool. The reason why we go to Vegas, it's too hot, too barren. But there's a lot of degeneracy in casinos out there where I can place my bets on, like Kyle Shanahan winning head coach of the year. He's the favorite right now, so get your bets.
Are you calling that right now? Are you calling that right now? Oh, if he's the favorite, then like,
no.
How good are the odds?
He's tied
How much
favorite.
money can you win if he's the favorite?
But he's tied. It's like plus 1,400, so that's actually pretty high. That's pretty good. Just put a little $100 flyer. Yeah, he might.
I wish he was
get
like
$100 flyer, $1,400.
Yeah. Oh,
just
yeah.
So
by the way,
just so those odds are higher.
Yeah. Just so that his odds are higher. I'm gonna have Javi cater his own Puerto Rican food here because he supposedly gets down with the Puerto Rican food. So I'm gonna let him go ahead and do that and cook for all of us.
Cool. He'll be our house mother. He's got the age. We just gotta gift him an apron. That's the only that's a nice thing with you. Gift him an apron, like a nice one.
Oh, so like a little mandilon.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I got like
give him a nice little hat too while we're at it.
Yeah, but hey guys, I appreciate the talk with all the food.
This went from tapped in 49ers to tapped in Mexican food.
Yeah, and then a little Puerto Rican food for Javi's sake. But hey, hopefully you see us here more often, Jose. Next Wednesday, I got you booked down. Let's go ahead and we'll talk some food. Come with your food takes at the end. We'll do the 49ers talk and then we'll talk some food at the end. How's that sound?
In-N-Out and Five Guys debate? No, that's kind of frustrating me at this point. It's getting too much.
Save it for next week. We can do it. We'll talk about it next week, or else we would be here for another hour talking about it.
No. Yeah, you're right. Bottle it up.